Michigan is well known for its Great Lakes. Few know how they continue to be the magnificent bodies of water that have become integral in the daily lives of many. The Great Lakes are maintained through human interaction, but the water cycle is a key factor in the continuation of these lakes. From evaporation to precipitation, the cycle keeps the water moving and allows it to stay fresh. The Great Lakes are part of the aquatic biome, or the environment involving water. The Great Lakes are known as oligotrophic lakes, or lakes with low nutrient content. This is why our lakes are relatively clear. Other regions in Michigan have marsh-like areas where eutrophication increases the amount of algae in the water and has large amounts of nutrient within the environment. Airplanes and their jet fuel are one of the biggest impacts as humans have on our environment. The jet fuel that is used during flight affects the biosphere, the environment concerning all living creatures, by adding carbon-based molecules as well as other dangerous chemicals to the atmosphere. This leads to the greenhouse effect, as the molecules released don't allow light energy from the sun to rebound from the Earth's surface. This also contributes negatively to global warming, heating up the Earth further. Climate all around the Earth is affected by this, including us. Acid precipitation occurs more often due to the increased amount of sulfur-based molecules within the air, from the airplanes and certain chemical sprays. The amount of chemicals we are releasing is continuously increasing, as human population growth has increased our need for planes and chemical sprays. Animals in Michigan interact with each other in differing ways. The most common interaction is competition. Competition is where the niches, or the habitats, of different species are near and they both consume the same animals or plants. The birds in the photograph are competing to consume the limited amount of worms that are on the surface of the ground. The relationship the birds have with the worms is one of predation. Birds also compete with the consumption of plants, which is a form of herbivory.
Cycles, trophic structure, and energy flow have a great impact on ecosystems. As we can see in the picture, when a deer dies, it feeds various animals like coyotes, carrion birds, and insects, and decomposers like prokaryotes and fungi. All these trophic relations where biomass is transferred within an ecosystem can be represented by food webs. In them, the transfer of food can be appreciated from primary producers, plants, to primary consumers, herbivores like the deer, to secondary and tertiary consumers, carnivores like coyotes. Through all these steps, mass and energy are conserved, according to the law of conservation of mass and the laws of thermodynamics. However, most of the energy is lost as heat during the activities of different organisms. This loss can be measured by the trophic efficiency, that indicates the percentage of production transferred from one trophic level to another. For example, when a plant undergoes photosynthesis, about only 10% of the energy received in the form of light from the sun is actually used. Then, when a deer eats that plant, only the same percentage is transferred. One consequence of low trophic efficiency is represented in pyramids of biomass, where the biomass produced in each trophic level is displayed. Most of them exhibit a decrease in biomass at successfully higher trophic levels, because energy transfers between energy levels are so inefficient. Another consequence of energy and mass transfers is biological magnification. Toxic chemicals released in an environment tend to concentrate in the higher trophic levels, because the biomass produced at any trophic level is produced from a much larger biomass ingested from the level before. Because of that, carnivores like coyotes are usually severely affected by toxic chemicals released by humans. These turkeys display a specific color pattern with their feathers, allowing them to blend in with their environment and avoid being noticed by potential predators. This specific defense mechanism is called cryptic coloration, or more commonly known as camouflage. Other animals exhibit aposematic coloration, which is the use of bright colors to warn predators about their deadly chemical defenses, like this blue dart frog. This form of coloration deters said predators due to the predator's knowledge of a correlation between bright colors and danger. A third type of defensive coloration is Batesian mimicry. Species presenting this defense are harmless, but resemble other harmful species by copying or mimicking the coloration patterns and shape of the deadly. For example, this silverfin fly looks like a wasp, so predators will avoid eating it, despite lacking any kind of chemical defense. A lichen is a composite organism that arises from the relation between an algae and a fungus. This is a clear example of a mutualistic relationship where both species benefit each other, improving their chances of survival. In this case, the algae undergoes photosynthesis, producing carbon compounds, while the fungus gathers nutrients and moisture from the environment and provides protection. This specific mutualistic relation is called symbiosis, because both species depend completely from each other to survive. At the same time, the lichen and the tree where it lives share a commensalising relationship, where only one member is benefited, while the other only remains the same. The tree's bark provides a substrate to the lichen and a privileged spot for capturing sunlight, while the lichen causes no harm to the tree. However, a fungus like Fomes fomentarius lives and obtains nutrients from the tree's bark, absorbing the nutrients from the tree itself. In parasitism relations like this, a parasite derives its nourishment from a host, which is harmed in the process. Fomes fomentarius cannot develop and reproduce by itself, so it fully depends on the tree for survival. All of these are interspecific relations where two species interact with each other and with a wide impact on both communities.
Disasters such as major storms and wildfires can cause an ecosystem to have to reestablish itself completely. Through these changes come the concepts of ecological succession. The image on the left is the result of both major storms and human interaction. This makes the regeneration of this environment an example of secondary succession, a scenario in which the soil of an environment is left intact, allowing organisms endemic to the area to repopulate. In more severe cases, in which soil and everything along with it are completely changed, primary succession occurs. Primary succession involves repopulation with life that is often different to what was previously indigenous to an area. Regardless, any example of succession has a significant ability to alter the species richness, otherwise known as the number of species present of an ecosystem. Foundational species, often primary producers that contribute greatly to an ecosystem, such as trees, usually are the hardest hit during an event of this magnitude. As a result, dominant species may lose their foothold in an ecosystem undergoing succession. Keystone species, species that play significant roles in an ecosystem relative to their population size, may change with the new environment. Dandelions are perfect examples of organisms that reproduce using the method of R selection. R selection is a process in which an organism produces as much offspring as possible with very little parental investment. R selection directly contrasts with K selection, where an organism has fewer offspring and puts much more of an investment into each one. R selection can be seen in a dandelion, as through maturation, its seeds blow into the air in massive numbers with no specific target in sight. Dandelions' offspring undergo dispersion, meaning that they move away from an initial place of birth across an ecosystem where they grow on their own. This can also be interpreted as a form of migration. Ever wondered how dandelions seem to be everywhere in the spring and summer? That can partially be accounted for when considering migration. Dandelion seeds migrate across vast distances, carried by the wind. As they land far and wide due to both sheer volume and wind patterns, dandelions find ways to develop seemingly everywhere.
This image shows a forest that has undergone a major habitat change. The forest contains both deciduous trees, which lose their leaves in the winter, and coniferous trees, which do not. This area, which was originally terrestrial, or land-based, has been submerged due to rising water levels of a nearby lake. This flooding is a density-independent factor in the ecosystem shown in the photo. Density-dependent factors such as disease and predation affect an ecosystem at a rate related to population density. The flooding shown is density-independent. It affects the organisms living here regardless of the population density since the entire area is flooded. This flooding is also an abiotic factor since it is a natural process that affects organisms living in an ecosystem but is not biological or biologically driven in nature. A likely cause of this flooding is climate change. An increase in warmer weather could have caused the precipitation required to drive these rising water levels.